This is the DLR Cast, the essential podcast for fans of Diamond David Lee Roth. All right, heard you missed us. We're back. Yes, it's the DLR Cast, the only podcast by and for fans of the mighty one, the Diamond One, David Lee Roth. And here we are, bringing you the latest and quite possibly, but with no guarantees that it's the greatest, news on all things Diamond Dave. I'm Steve, no relation to DLR that I know of Roth, joined as always like a lightning bolt in your gluten-free Cheerios, the dangerous and dynamic Darren Paltrowitz. How are you, Darren? Been a while.
Great.
Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks. And only our second podcast since M3 happened, or is this three? I'm losing track.
Well, we did the big tag team one. That was the end of May, and shoot, I think that might be it.
It's been a bit, and at the same time, it's been quiet related to David Lee Roth, noisy related to Van Halen, noisy thanks to people who listen to our show, thanks to all of them. I mean, the only Dave exclusive to like modern day that I can give right now is I know that rehearsals started about 2.5 weeks ago. So this is another case where Dave is going to be super well rehearsed and prepared for these shows. I didn't pry to go, hey, which new songs are being done, and did anyone get kicked out? I don't think anyone got kicked out or replaced. I think it's status quo and just really smooth rehearsals. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, this bodes well when you look back on what we talked about in the last episode and our concerns, and that was there's a bit of time between that triumphant return that basically everybody from the media to just about all but maybe, the usual haters that Dave will always have on message boards, things like that. It was a really triumphant and very well received return. And I know we talked about, okay, there's that length of time, and will Dave's attention span and passion still be there the way it was leading into, and as we saw at that M3 show. So I take this as this is great news, because here we are. It is June 29th, the first show, July 22nd at the California Mid-State Fair, Paso Robles, California. So finally, what seemed like it was going to take forever for M3 to get here, and then seemed like forever for this start of what's hopefully going to be the first leg of a longer tour. Yeah, we got something going here, so I'm thrilled that rehearsals are happening.
Yes. So one of our haters, a person who hates your guts but spends 2.5 hours listening to you talk, which never really makes a lot of sense.
Is this royal we, both of us, you, me?
No. Oh, me. No. It was entirely me. They hated the fact that I said that Dave loses interest in stuff and that the first few dates on this run will be smooth and he'll be into it, and then he'll get tired of the whole thing. Then after that happened, a bunch of people who didn't post publicly, but they DM'd or they put comments up a little bit hidden, they went, "You're right. That's going to happen." So I hate to be pessimistic. I'd love to be proven wrong. The wife, Mrs. Paltrowitz, has decided, I believe we're going to 3 different shows on this summer run. We already have tickets to Long Island. It looks like Atlantic City is going to be happening. It looks like Pennsylvania. I heard a rumor that the Mojo Dojo might be there in Pennsylvania. Just a rumor.
Ooh, man, this is... Oh boy, I'm going to sound this. I was looking at the schedule again, trying to figure out which one I can get to, and I'm just not going to be able to, because August 18th, I'm getting like a shades of Eddie and probably Dave as well. I'm having a hip replacement, so I can walk and do things without being in complete pain, and that's August 18th. So there's no way I'm going to hit any of those shows immediately within the first couple of weeks after that. And I'm not going to be able to get to, it's killing me that I would love to get, nothing better. I would love to get out to the Huntington, New York one on August 10th. So
we're thinking of you. I think there's a chance you'll be able to get to a show or 2 or 3. I think that there's more to come if these shows do go well and he has not lost interest. And the UK, no one has told me this, of course.
Right.
Using patterns here. I think UK, Japan, I think that kind of stuff will happen. I think there'll be Texas. Weren't there no Texas shows on this run? I haven't looked at the routing in a
Yeah,
while.
yeah, I pulled it up before the start of the show, and there is, like we talked about last time, there's
Yeah.
a lot of the US that is not covered yet. It's funny because when I look at this now, it's running through September 4th,
Yeah.
and we've got one, two, three, four, five different dates. The last four dates are all in California. The first date is in
Right.
California. So definitely got the West Coast real covered. Florida, Virginia, Atlantic City, Huntington, New York, Hampton Beach, New Hampshire. These are casinos like we talked about, a couple state fairs,
Right.
Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, Hard Rock Casino in Gary, Indiana, Cincinnati. So he's got a big swath of the US between the South and the real true Midwest. In parts of the Southwest, he's got a lot. Got a lot of places he could see through the fall, and it's going to be interesting to know what happens if we see anything.
Right.
I'm real curious to see if there's a couple things I'm curious about. One, I guess I should no longer be curious because I don't think he's been doing any promotion for any of these shows. Has there been any? Let's
No.
put it this way. My YouTube alerts don't have not gone off for him in ages.
Right.
My face, and so it. I guess it shouldn't be surprised. I mean, if I'm a promoter, I would love for Dave to do some pre-show press, but that's not happening. And maybe these tickets are just going to sell because the buzz is so good coming out of M3, and no one's seen Dave do anything in 6 years.
Yeah, that would be my assumption with the whole thing, that unless they had it in the contract that he had to do one appearance or something like that, it's not happening. That when we think about how many interviews in the last five-ish years, there was the Rogan appearance, which he actually went to Austin, Texas to tape. There was the
Hmm.
VMA's red carpet, where he wound up surprisingly announcing Lil Nas X. And that,
The airport sighting and
yeah,
the knock on the Las Vegas hotel room door.
yeah, that even that was pre-pandemic. So that's 6, 7 years now.
I I got to thinking of this the other day earlier in the year, and we talked about how this may have been a catalyst for a lot of what became a lot more activity was that cool video that Dave did. I think it was his last full-length bigger piece of content that came out when he was was it Thailand?
Yes, Thailand.
Wouldn't it be so cool? Color me crazy, but wouldn't it be so cool to just give me 90 seconds, 3.5 minutes, as much time as you want, 10, 12, 15 minutes of just some odds and ends, real fast flurry motion, the typical bit with of just some footage of Dave and the band, a couple quick rehearsals, the backup singers, zoom in on a freaking mixing desk with a set list attached to it. I mean, you and I could put something together like this. We can storyboard this in about 5 minutes.
What I entirely agree with is not only would that be a good thing, but what I've heard from people who know is there are actually interesting messages scrawled on road cases for Dave. So meaning
Hmm.
the interesting stuff is actually happening and out there. It's just they choose not to document it.
Yeah.
That meaning there are actually jokes behind the scenes. They don't even have to try to be interesting. There are things happening, and all someone would have to do is film it, and not even any work to that. But hey, what do we know? We don't know anything. Blah blah blah. But you mentioned the hip surgery thing before, which we of course want the best for you. But you're making reference to the post VMAs press
Right.
conference in '96, and that has actually been something I started digging into a little bit. And I put up a thing on YouTube earlier today. I was struggling for a while to find something one of our listeners had referenced, which is a 1996 interview that Al and Ed did for Japanese TV. It might have been with Masa Ito from Burn Magazine.
Hmm.
And this is 96, around the time of the Best Of compilation. And Van Halen always had a special relationship with Japan where they do exclusive interviews only for Japan.
Right.
And I don't know if that's because they're selling guitar gear. I don't know if it's just they saw more money to be made, whatever it was. Japan got a lot of exclusives. And in this interview, they're asked about the best of compilation, all that. And Eddie confirms that they're going to be making a music video for Me Wise Magic, and likely they'll be on the road that summer.
Oh,
He confirms it. Fast forward a couple of months, the infamous Dave, he better be wearing a cup the next time I see him, that one. MTV
right.
News reporter goes, so you told Dave that there would be no touring? He goes, absolutely. So I did a side-by-side video that I just posted on the Paltrocast channel that you can actually see. This is what Ed and Al said. A couple months later, this is what Ed and Al said. So that all leads me down the rabbit hole.
Hold on 1 second, because I'm thinking back to that, how adamant in all those interviews after that the VMAs all went down. We told Dave this was just a couple songs, just gonna feel it out, nothing else. That's it. Just come on in and sing. That's it. You want to come in anytime? I mean, that's it. They were so adamant that this was not a reunion. This wasn't a thing. We were just a couple songs. And as it turns out, that was contradicted several months before by Eddie himself.
Now, I didn't put the
pre-contradicted, let's say.
It was totally contradicted. Now, I didn't put the full quote from the Van Halens in there, but in the first clip, the Japan one, they say one music video. And then in the MTV News one, they say two music videos. So it was one
Me
music
Wise
video
Magic,
and a tour.
Yeah, and, Me Wise Magic and the other track.
Can't Get the Stuff No More, which very few people like by comparison to Me Wise Magic.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, there were supposed to be videos. There was supposed to be some form of touring. And my heart goes out, and I'm not being ironic here, because sometimes I do defend Dave. I am of the belief that Dave was forced out of Van Halen in '85. I am of the belief that Dave was forced out of the reunion in '96. And so when you go like, why did Dave have a chip on his shoulder about this and that? Because he was twice fired from that band. If you look at how Sammy was forced out in '96, that was also he quit. No, they fired me. You look at how Gary Sharon was forced out when he thought he was making another album. That was another, he quit. No, they fired me. They have this history of that. So we make fun
They have a history of really bad communication skills.
Yeah, Michael Anthony didn't know he was out of the band.
No.
He just heard that there was a tour. And, he went, oh, I guess I didn't get the invite.
I didn't get a call.
Exactly. So I have a lot of empathy for Dave, where I make fun of how eccentric he might be, or how angry he might be. But I would be angry too if I got burned twice. And both times, the people who burned me were then going, he's such an egomaniac. He's so hard to work with.
You're burned and backstabbed. I hate to say it. I mean,
yes. So no wonder Dave was pissed the few times he tried to reunite in the early 2000s, and why it blew up again. Because he'd been burned like that twice before. Who knows how many things he was told was going to happen and didn't.
Right. I mean, I just got to thinking too, how lucky we were that the reunion ever happened at all. Knowing all the things we know that did not happen, that were supposed to happen. Knowing what we know now, pre-2005, between, say, 1995 and 2005. And I mean, it's a wonder that the 2005 reunion ever happened at all. That must have been a Herculean lift.
Yeah. What was that, a reference to that Van Halen album cover with the bodybuilder holding up the world? Was that what that was?
5150? I didn't even think of that, but nice catch there.
So I've been delving into that era of the 90s Van Halen. And then another listener of ours, Danny Young, great rock drummer in Norway. He's been in some bands that have done some stuff. We'll let Danny promote his stuff. But he said to me, because he sent a poster. We like to talk about that 1999 Finland MTV 4 show, MTV 8 show, whatever it was in Finland that I'm
Right.
obsessed with. And he sent me a poster to another festival Dave did in 99. And he goes, "Hey, I don't think that was a one-off in Finland." And I looked it up and I found August 8th, 1999, he played in Estonia. June 10th, 99, he played in the Netherlands. Also June 9th. August 6th, it looks like he played in Denmark at Skandenborg Smukfest. Sweden Rock on June 12th, 99 in Sweden. And that might not be everything. So in other words, it looks like Dave was around for a festival season in 99. I remember you're a fellow Long Islander by your native orientation, but he played CPI in East Quogue, I remember in 99 or 2000.
Wow. Yes, I wasn't there, but I do remember because I know CPI. I do remember
Yeah.
thinking back, whoa, that's really interesting to say the
Yes.
least.
So where are all the videos of these 99 shows? In other words, Dave wasn't as quiet as we think he was in the DLR band era. On that tour, he was doing slam dunk in the live setting, going, this is a song from the new record, that kind of a thing. We are kind of conditioned to go, DLR band album came out. He did one or two shows, no videos, disappeared. And we had one or two listeners who tried to correct me and say there was a promo video for Slam Dunk. And if there was, I still can't find it.
Boy, I don't think so. I mean, the funny thing is about that for slam dunk and all that was I look as it the word faceless comes to mind, right?
Hmm.
Because I mean there was no photos of Dave, nope, the band it was piecemeal, right?
Yeah.
Bourbon Bob and and Terry
Yep.
um
3 or 4 different
right,
guitarists on that
right,
record. Terry Kilgore, John Five is John Lowry, Mike, why am I forgetting his name? Mike Hartman, who passed away within a few
right,
years of that. And I forget if Bourbon Bob was John Lowry or Mike Hartman. There's information suggesting that it's both of them.
right. Well, in any case, I mean, listen, it's an amazing record, but
Hmm.
it's funny that you mentioned was there ever video because it seemed like that there was a lot of intense promotional activity right when it came out. It got on the radio.
Yeah,
He did some interviews and stuff. There was no real tour for it, or at least a DLR band tour, right? I
right.
mean, and then just away it went.
Away it went. So when I interviewed Roth in the early 2000s, and naive me was asking about the set list and if he'll be playing Slam Dunk, and he said something like, "Oh, there's not going to be enough time for that because we have so many hits. I got more hits than The Sopranos, Homeboy." I don't know if he said that in mind. That was the thing that he was saying a lot in that era. But that album is kind of a lost album, and it's currently still only available on Amazon Music, and not the whole album, kind of like three-quarters of it is available,
Right.
which, but it sounds like there was more activity in that summer of 99 than is really documented. So I'm curious if we have any savant listeners that are going to suddenly track down all these videos and we have another Finland MTV on our hands to enjoy.
I hope so, but then you have to wonder, it's like it's not like YouTube came about 5 or 6 years ago. Isn't this stuff out there now? I mean, yeah, I get it. Van Halen stuff has been creeping out,
Yeah.
but I guess I'm under the expectation, I guess, or the impression that a lot of that Van Halen stuff, it probably might not have ever come out had Eddie not died. Do you know what I mean?
What I heard, I don't know if we talked about this on the podcast because I was very protective of my sources with the video leaks. But what I'd heard is that those videos were from Noel Monk's collection that he had sold
Mm,
as part of his estate sale, maybe to a couple of different buyers. And it was supposed to be a gentleman's agreement of you will keep this to yourself, you'll never put it out. And then one or two of the buyers got greedy and were trying to sell it for a lot of money. And somebody else caught wind of that and went, I'm not going to let that happen. I'd rather leak this so everyone gets it rather than somebody else be ripped off and the band not get the money. It was a Robin Hood-esque scenario that was going on. Did you ever hear those rumors?
I seem to remember you. Honestly, I think you may have brought that up uh, a while back ago on an episode. The whole Noel Monk thing, gentleman's agreement, it rings a distant bell. We may have talked about that offline a long time ago or something, but I maybe an astute listener with a far better memory than me might remember that you could have brought it up in passing. But yeah, that's one of the things that when I look back overall, I mean, and I'm thinking ahead now, if there's going to be any of Dave's solo material in the set list, or is it going to be straight Van Halen? Which, by the way, I said it before, I thought the set list at M3 was perfect. It's exactly, if I wanted all Van Halen set list, that's pretty much almost exactly what I would want it to be. But as a big fan of Dave's solo stuff, I mean, throw us a bone here. Give us one nugget, which I'm still incredulous that Big Train was aired opening up for Kiss. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, and from what you told me, they did practice things like She's My Machine and things like that. I got a feeling that band has got a repertoire of, I mean, between Van Halen and Dave, and who knows, maybe a few oddball covers. I would bet that current band as it stands right now has got a pretty deep song list if they want to choose from.
They
They're
for
so
sure.
well rehearsed.
Well, the last time I asked, and I didn't want to spoil everything for myself or for everybody, I'd heard it was around 40 songs that were learned, and this was as of April, I think. And I know that, and again, this is not spoiling anything because probability wise, you would have, if I say they learned 40 songs, you'd go, okay, so that includes everything except the 1984 intro and Intruder.
Yeah.
You take away that stuff, and the Van Halen catalog with Dave probably is 56 songs or something very light. There's not a lot of songs on Diver Down or 1984. So I'd
Right.
heard
And
that
it's
they
not like
did.
they're going to do something like One Foot Out the Door or something. I mean,
Yeah, I don't think so.
no.
But I had heard that they learned DOA, which Dave did do. The first time I saw him in '03, he did not do DOA, but he was doing it later in that tour in '04 when I saw him in Milwaukee. It became a later set list addition.
Man, that's one of the ones I would love to see added because I absolutely love that song.
Yeah, so I'm excited. I'm curious to see what happens. I'm curious to see if I wind up seeing the same show 3 times. I would not be shocked if that happened because that kind of
No.
happened to me aside from DOA. I think I've told the story on the air of seeing him live in Japan and he's doing the Spanish part of the show and he's
Right.
going like, "But you don't look like Beyonce." At the imaginary girl in the crowd. And I'm sure
And that was the exact same rap.
yeah. He was doing this shuffle kind of thing and over it going sexy, 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 sexy. And I don't know how great that was for an almost at that time 50-year-old man to be doing that, but that's our Dave. I don't know what's going to happen. I could ask, but I kind of want to be surprised.
I was just thinking that I'm trying to think. I mean, most veteran bands, with very few exceptions, do stick to that almost the same set list every night.
Yeah,
So,
lighting cues,
yep,
costume changes, etc.
yep, yep. And maybe there's space for one or two changes here and there, but or something gets placed in because the air conditioning sucks and the vocal cords are, I mean, there's
Yeah.
odd stuff like that. And which is a perfect segue into Dave's voice because for all intents and purposes, or tense and porpoises, or very intense and purposes, whatever you want it to
Yeah.
be. I once sat down, and I wasn't even stoned when I did this. I once sat down and tried to write down every variation of that mixed up saying.
Hmm.
But that just shows you how boring my life can be.
Seriously, folks.
Thank you. Uh, but I mean, we were all of the mind, and we talked about this with Dave and Dave that his voice sounds as good as damn good, pardon the pun, for 68, 69, 70-year-old guy, whatever
Yeah.
Dave's telling everybody how old he is right now, or you can remember. I'm fine with it. I think it's great, but it reminded me a couple weeks ago, I don't know if you heard this, Joe Satriani and Steve Vai were on Eddie Trunk's podcast because they've got some music they've been doing together. And Eddie at the
Yeah.
beginning brought up the fact that, hey, Joe, you played with Sammy, and Dave, Steve, of course, you played with Dave. Have you caught Dave on, did you hear about a show? Did you catch this? And they both had super complimentary things to say about Dave. Steve in particular said his voice sounded real, he said his voice, from what I know, sounded great. And he
Right.
brought up this thing, and Steve is obviously a consummate musician, so I'm assuming this actually exists. And I'm not a music theory guy or anything, but do you remember? I remember, in fact, I think it's in my Your Little Ain't Enough tour book,
Mhm.
which is a rarity. I think he
Yes.
brings it up in the interview. Around that time, he was talking about how he found a new octave. And Steve Vai mentions this. This
Yeah.
is just 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. And he kind of got into a little in depth where, he's doing things differently with his voice that he didn't always do. I thought he sounded good. And then conversely, what I thought was really cool, Joe Satriani gave total props to Al Estrada,
Mhm.
which I thought was really cool because I mean, I know, in my mind, it's like, oh, he knows who Al is. But I mean, great guitar players know who other great guitar players are, I guess. But
Yeah.
and Joe, for a minute, was in some sort of almost VH without Sammy world, if you know what I'm talking about. So I just
Yeah.
thought it was just nice to hear two stellar guitar players, two veterans like that, that are kind of on that Dave periphery. One who played with Dave had some really nice things about Dave 2025.
With Joe, though, you always have to remember before he really made it, he was a guitar teacher. And do you know some of his students
Oh, yeah, Kirk
were?
Hammett, Steve I.
Yeah, the guy from Third Eye Blind
Yeah,
was one of his students. I think Larry from Primus was one of his students.
right,
It's amazing who he taught and how influential a bunch of those people wound up being. That's almost a great documentary unto itself. And I
right.
wonder if recordings of those guitar lessons do exist. Because
You,
parents might have said, "Hey, I'm paying all this for your education. You better re-listen to that and learn that stuff."
You know what I love to think about? How many people are out there who, just fucked it off and didn't care, or they, were into girls or whatever it was, and just 20 years later go, holy shit, what was I thinking? I blew off this guy. The
Yeah.
check bounced. My mom said, you saw, we're not going to do this anymore. And I blew off this guy's guitar lessons, right?
Yeah. Datch. Well, so that's why I'm not surprised he knows who the guitar players
Right,
are. Him,
right.
him and Vi are known to be two of the more accessible guitar gods. In other words, I'm sure they both get along with Ingve, and I'm sure Ingve has their respect and vice versa. But Ingve would not be going, "Oh, who are the new hotshot ones?" Like, have you seen those recent Ingve quotes that have emerged about how
Hmm.
he claims that Eddie Van Halen was listened to Ingve nonstop, and he was always avoiding him? I like Ingve. I don't believe any of that
No, no,
at
I
all.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah, there was an interview that Eddie gave. I think it was the Smithsonian era where he said he doesn't listen to music in his car, and the last album he had bought was So by Peter Gabriel. And go, so therefore, I kind of don't think, if you believe that stuff, that he
Yeah,
was
no, I
listening to
mean,
Ingve.
it's funny because Wolf has mentioned that. I've heard that Peter Gabriel
Yeah,
anecdote from numerous different places. It was that and AC/DC.
I think so. And two
Because,
songs from 1984 were modeled after AC/DC.
yeah, and Wolf loved AC/DC. And of course, you know, when he was coming up, he always used to reference Clapton. So I think was
Yeah.
into Cream and Clapton. And I think in
Mountain with Leslie
Right,
West.
Mountain with Leslie West, Black
Yeah.
Sabbath, I think,
Yeah.
and he, of course, he became great friends with Tony Iommi. But
Yeah.
I think from like once he got into adulthood more, and I totally believe the fact that he was tuned out what was going on in the rest of the rock world. Maybe he picked up Guitar World magazine because he was in it or something, or he's got 5150 ads in there or whatever, and Matt's bringing into the studio what might have. But I always got that impression that he just didn't care. He was so into doing his own thing, however he wanted to do it. That just was like there was like a vacuum effect. It took up so much brain space and time
Yeah.
It's, I mean, Eddie was never one of those guys. You never saw him ever that I can think of where the paparazzi caught him coming out of another rock show.
No, farmers market, yes.
Yeah.
Rock show,
Yeah.
no. All those things in Scott Yeager's WDFA group. It's just Ed at the farmers market
Right.
or something. He went to the Tool show near the end of his life with Wolfgang.
Right.
There's the story about him going to a Nirvana show and basically Kurt wanting nothing to do with Eddie because of a bad comment Eddie made about Pat Smear. But yeah, I don't think he was a guy who did music once he was an adult. I don't think he did music unless he was getting paid to do music or as a favor for somebody. I really don't think he hung out in the clubs. I heard about a lay-low gig or two he did in this Malibu spot that was kind of a private club. I think he was out for drinks and someone went, "Here's a guitar, can you play a song?" And he'd do that. The Saturday Night Live stomping 8H thing.
Right. Right.
You do that, but he was not seeking out the next great guitar player aside from that band Private. What was that band that he produced? Private.
Ooh,
We have 80 listeners right now punching their speakers, going, "Oh, Private Life" was the band.
yes. Yeah.
I don't think he was ever seeking the new talent or the new greats unless they were in front of him and Matty Bruck or somebody went, "This is this guy. You should listen to him."
And yet, from what we all know, he always made time and spent time with just about every opening band. The guitar player
Yes.
from different and somehow I mean, he maybe saw them from the wings, let's say, opening up, but he knew so many of who those guys were and became friends with them, and paid attention to them. Conversely, when you think of Dave, you never really saw Dave in front of the rock shows either. I mean, you saw him in front of the Roxy, let's say, in Hollywood, drinking a beer. There was those various photo ops. But I mean, the last 20 years, if he was out at if he, from the way it always sounds like with Dave, it was about dance clubs and some weird, whatever underground stuff. And as far as new and current music, maybe not a show, but what he was playing on his iPad or whatever,
Yeah.
I doubt it was rock stuff. Doesn't never sound like it.
In the 80s, Dave was known in the early 80s to be at Motley Crue shows before they were signed, before they were anything. And I think Trickster guitar player Steve Brown told me about meeting Dave in 89 or 90 at some LA club gig, like right around when they were getting signed. And I interviewed the guitar player of Sound Barrier, who's now in Fishbone, a couple weeks ago. He mentioned Dave being at one of their shows in the 80s. I think he was always at the clubs in the 80s because he was partying and
Right.
meeting people and he liked to be seen. We've had listeners talk about how he had, was it a town car that had something painted on the hood that you would have thought it was vandalized, but
I think it was a town car or a big Mercedes sedan.
it was some kind of a luxury car,
Right.
but then it had some kind of spray painted looking thing so that you knew he was there. So I think that he wanted everyone to know that he was out and about and they might see him on the strip, on the motorcycle, which he's talked about, or the car. And then in the 90s, all of that changed. Maybe it's because he moved to New York in the early
And there were
90s.
Dave sightings in New York. It's just very often, I mean, well, there was one big one, a Dave sighting in New York at was it Washington Square Park?
Which I'm starting to believe that was a publicity stunt and not
Oh,
real.
yeah, you've posited that theory before too, and I would not be surprised.
I couldn't find an arrest record on it. In other words, I could find the mugshot. You could find the clip of him being walked out of the police station, but I couldn't find anything. And usually, if a person's criminal charge has been expunged, it still exists, but it'll say like no information available or something like that. And I
But
couldn't find that when I looked.
on a side note, I mean, we're obviously from New York. Doesn't it stand to reason that there would have been at least some cop along the way or a retired cop going, "Oh yeah," you would find out somewhere it was like, "Oh yeah, that was all bullshit." We've never heard that.
Right, right. So
Right? Who
conspiracy
knows?
theories continue with all that kind of stuff. But you talked about Alistrata, who everyone gives rave reviews
Yeah.
of the guitar playing, but he's not the only Dave related guitar player that's been in headlines the past couple of weeks. Did you see Joe Holmes had a new single come out?
I did see that, yes. And man, I can't remember the last time I knew what he was doing. Good to see him getting some publicity here. I always
Well,
liked the guy. He played with Ozzy and obviously he played with Dave on the Little Ain't Enough tour. I don't
well,
think they ever wrote anything together.
I don't think so, but I've got a theory about this one because it mentions on bass is Robert Trujillo and on
Right.
drums is Mike Borden. And at first you go, wow, all-star band. You got the bassist of Metallica and the drummer of Faith No More. And then you go, wait, no, that's Ozzy's rhythm section from the late 90s. And Joe was in Ozzy's band.
Osmosis, yeah, he was on the Osmosis record, or after Zach Wild, or at least he co-wrote songs. I think he was on it. Yeah,
Yeah, I think Steve Vai was supposed to join, and hence he had a couple of co-writes, but it didn't work out for
there's a
whatever
couple
reason.
guests on that record too. I just remember being bummed out about that record because No More Tears was just like, for me, that was the pinnacle of post
Yeah,
Randy Rhoads.
but
Yeah, I mean, I just thought I was, if nothing else, I remember being disappointed that that band did not continue after No More Tears because that album is just incredible front to back.
agreed. And I'm thinking that these songs of Joe Holmes were recorded then. That's what
Why
I'm
come out
thinking.
now? Why come out now?
Well, why would Robert Trujillo and Mike Borden, who presumably don't live in Los Angeles in 2025? Okay, maybe Robert does. He probably has five homes. Who are we kidding?
Yeah,
Um,
who knows?
Mike Borden's been very quiet in recent years. You don't see him popping up doing cameos. I don't know if he's even going to be on that final Black Sabbath show, even though he was in Ozzy's band for what, 15 years?
Safe, reliable energy makes the world go round. And to do so, today's wind farms and solar parks rely on solutions from ABB Installation Products. Designed to outmatch hazards and to help ensure safety. Made to outmuscle the elements and help equipment last longer. Built to outlast downtime and keep systems running. ABB helps deliver what wind farm and solar park operators desire most. Maximum uptime. Powerful stuff. ABB. Engineered to outrun.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah,
Jake
he
E. Lee's making an appearance, apparently. I saw that somewhere. Good on
yeah,
him.
which is great. And Wolfgang unfortunately just had to cancel.
I
Speaking of
saw
that
that.
show, yeah. So good to see Joe Holmes is out there.
Yeah.
Hopefully he'll do something. Jake Faun, who is playing second guitar with besides Alistrata, he's been in a few Starbucks ads lately with the Classic Rock All Stars. I don't think you've seen those.
No, I have not seen those.
Good residual money, but Jake kind of went from the Roth gig to COVID derailing it to some filling gigs for Winger. I think he's now in the Bullet Boys, who Ted Templeman produced,
Right.
and he's got this classic rock all-star band. I'm sure I'm getting the name wrong. I think is Chuck Wright from Quiet Riot in it, or Sean
Yeah,
McNabb?
Sean McNabb was in Quiet Riot, and was he also in Rat for a second, maybe? And Chuck Wright played on the things that are still in my brain. Chuck Wright played on the QR3 record,
Yes,
which I still love.
with Paul
Far better.
Shortino, Duke
Paul,
fame.
no, Paul Shortino was on the following record. QR3 is the last record with Kevin Dubrow. Well, no, maybe not the last record because I think he came back to the band and did a record too before he died. But yes, the original that, yeah,
So not
Paul,
Duke fame.
no, Paul Shortino was on, and I remember working for CBS Records then. I got copies of that vinyl, and I wish I kept with Paul Shortino, and I wish I kept it and never did, but I remember having trouble giving those away. Hence the adage, I couldn't give those away. But
And then he joined Rough Cut after that, I think.
I saw Rough Cut open for, right. Or before that, I saw Rough Cut open for Ronnie James Dio on the Sacred Heart Tour, Vivian Campbell at the Nassau Coliseum in 1985. And
Wow, that's a
yeah,
show.
yeah.
And
And they did a cover of Janis Joplin's "Piece of My Heart." Rough Cut did.
huh,
Yeah,
wow, the more you know.
Man, it's the more
The,
the things that are still stuck in my memory banks, man.
well, I mean, I'm guilty of that too. I'm still telling you what former David Lee Roth guitar players are doing. And Frankie Lindia is staying super busy with Atomic Punks, a lot of stuff for social media where he's testing out guitar pedals. I think he has his own model of guitar now. He's really worked his way up on that end. And I think Kane Rashad is still with Haim, who just announced a new album.
Right, and they got a big single or something that I saw floating around, and I was just going to ask what Rocket Rashad is doing.
You know what? I haven't looked in a little bit. I don't know when he was interviewed for this show and I used some of that on the show. It sounded like he was trying to retire and wind down. And it sounded
Right,
like the Friends TV score residuals were really nice and something that you could partially live off of.
little
That's the
mailbox
vibe I
money,
got.
little mailbox money. Wait, is his son a drummer?
Yeah,
Yeah,
in Haim, I think he
right,
plays drums and then some guitar because they change instruments a little bit. I think all
right.
three of the Haim ladies started as drummers,
I think that
and
rings a bell. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah,
yeah,
so this I wanted to get back to this, rewind a bit to the beginning because you mentioned this for a second. As far as we know, the band that's going to be in Paso Robles with the backup singers, this is the same group with the backup singers that we saw at M3.
I didn't pry, but I'm assuming so. I
So
could ask, I could find out. I'm also afraid too that I'm going to jinx the whole
yeah,
thing.
no. I
But
get it. I get
but
it.
when I
We
look on
could take
social,
we could do a listener pool. Like, will there? I mean, the odds are probably fairly good that Dave might change drummers sometime, given his
oh,
propensity of changing drummers.
so here's what I heard. I heard that Dave, and I've said this on the podcast. Mike Musselman might have said this on the record. If he didn't, deny, allegedly. But people have told me, and I don't know if it was Musselman, that Dave is notoriously hardest on the drummer in any band.
Right.
But Dave loves Francis's playing. There's some quote like, "Thank you for giving me my dance grooves back." There's some quote along those lines about how much he loves Francis's drumming. And Francis joined in early 2020. He's made it this long.
A
Uh,
half a decade is a long time for a Dave drummer, so give it up. That the odds are
so
good. We'll see him on on these dates on this tour.
so why I don't think that the band lineup changed is because Francis has been sharing Dave's tour dates on his social media. I saw one within the last week where Ryan Wheeler shared it on social media.
Woo!
Alistrada's bio still says, David Lee Roth.
Right.
Danny Wagner's still says David Lee Roth. And when you get fired from a high profile gig, don't you immediately delete that credit?
I would think so.
I would think so. I didn't look at the four backup singers who I think I identified on our Dave and Dave Unchained
Right. Well, I'm
episode.
still disappointed they were never introduced, but disappointed but not surprised.
So,
In,
so oh,
in
Dave and
fact, the
Dave
band
Unchained.
wasn't even introduced.
Embark on a flavorful adventure with the all-new Tasty Trails package at Camelback Resort. Perfect for you and up to 3 guests to enjoy a delicious culinary experience each day of your stay. Start your mornings with 1 meal and non-alcoholic beverage per person at Hemispheres. Then close out the night with a $120 dinner credit to any participating restaurant across the resort. Whether you're fueling up for fun or winding down after a thrilling day, great food awaits. Visit camelbackresort.com to book the Tasty Trails package today.
You are correct about that. Yeah, yeah, you're totally correct about that. Their names were not said. Huh.
I mean, it
I
takes 10 seconds, man. I mean, share a little love here, Dave. Come on.
Well, the Vegas show, and I think I said this on the air, sorry to repeat a story, but the Vegas show that I went to, the first one, he introduced the band, only he got their names wrong.
Right.
It was like that SNL skit of Sinatra introducing the band, but having no ideas what their names were.
Right.
He got Mike Musselman's name right, but Frankie Lindia's name, he said it is like something like Frankie Tartufo or something like that. Like have it written on the set list or something.
Uh, yeah, well, right next to the name of the town, just paste it on right next to the set list, tape to the stage. That easy, or on the teleprompter.
Yeah, but Dave and Dave Unchained, who I mentioned, their latest episode, which is your usual 4 hours of Van Halen bliss, they were talking about this balance reissue. Can we talk about that, or was there
Yeah,
another thing?
please, because I was really impressed by that. Not that I ran out and grabbed it, but it's just yet another reminder. Because I think the last couple, for what they have to work with, this one in particular, I think Warner Brothers is doing a good job. And it's none of this stuff. The initial six, what the six DLR Dave with Van Halen albums, none of them got this kind of reissue work to it.
Well, the sound is great, but as Dave and Dave Unchained were talking about, the information about these shows, the dates and the
Oh,
sequences may be wrong.
okay. Well, good on them, man. Those guys are amazing. Good on them for figuring that stuff out. But I remember looking at that press release and the photos. I'm just like, God damn it! What I would give, what we would give for a reissue package like that for fair warning.
So where this all kind of started is the people who are the real completist diehards were going, okay, I'm looking at the show and it looks like Aftershock is missing and Round Around is missing and then a roundabout rather that's missing and this is missing and I don't think they did an encore on that show.
Huh.
So it's possible that the label or Van Halen, if they provided it, provided the wrong date as to the show, and that's the confusion as to why the sequence is off.
Well, did Van Halen provide it? I mean, do they have any input or contact? Do you think Alex is jotting down a couple notes for whoever's maybe a day-to-day person? I doubt Van Halen had any.
Yeah,
It's non-existent.
so a lot of people are saying, well, why did you put this show on the balance thing, which you're not certain about, and not the show from the Molson Amphitheater in Canada that was actually filmed for a pay-per-view, which was already professionally mixed, and you had the video for it, and the band owns it. Why didn't you put that out when that's actually done, and instead of this show where you don't have correct information? That was one of the debates going on.
Man, I do you like Balance? I like that record. I wanted to love it. And I think it's one of those records where I just, to this day, I could have fixed this 100 times over the last 30 years. I don't think I ever listened to it enough because every time I listen, I'm like, yeah, there's some good stuff on here. And then, of course, around that same time, they did. It's not on the Balance record, but I know it's in this. It's in this limited edition. It's in the reissue. But
Yeah.
Humans Being is
Yeah.
like maybe my favorite Van Halen song with Sammy.
100% agree.
I know they didn't like the lyrics or whatever it was, or it was part of the soundtrack for
Twister.
Twister. Yeah. It's a twister. It's a twister. The idea that somebody sat down and went, all right, a movie. I mean, you know what it reminds me of? It's like it's almost that should have been like the Poseidon Adventure or Towering Inferno in the 70s. But in the 90s or somebody go, all right, weather, dangerous movie thriller.
I'm with you there, and weirdly, it had a second Van Halen contribution to the soundtrack, "Respect the Wind," which was an Alex and Eddie instrumental, which
Right.
people don't really talk about. But I'd heard rumors that there was supposed to be another song that was going to be like Van Halen's "Stairway to Heaven," but they ran out of time, or willpower or whatever. Ever heard those rumors?
Yeah, I did, and I'm reminded too when I look at the track listing. "Can't Stop Loving You" is one of my other favorite songs with Sammy. That hook is just a mile wide and a mile deep. That song is incredible. So I
Well,
mean,
Yeah.
it's a good,
According
it's a
to
damn good
Sammy,
record,
though,
and it sounds good.
to rudely interrupt you, according to Sammy, that was a #1 all-time record-breaking hit in Japan, even though the album, didn't go double platinum in Japan. That was a chart buster in Japan, and that's why they broke it out on the tour. Even though it never hit the #1 spot on the Oricon chart, it was a record breaker in Japan. Can't Stop Loving You. I love that song, though. I do love a couple of songs on that record. The whole thing, I cannot listen to. There is filler for sure on
Yeah.
that album. They have you ever heard that they called the tour the ambulance tour because there were so many medical mishaps?
Right. Yeah. I've heard that.
Not a happy band that made that record. I'm glad they're giving it a reissue. I still think it's a mystery as to why that Molson Amphitheater pay-per-view, though, why they never put that out as a live album, even for Record Store Day.
Reynolds wrap.
Reynolds wrap.
Potato wedges.
Wedges.
Olive oil. Salt.
Mwah. Well done, hon.
Well done, chef.
Right.
With Reynolds Wrap, cooking becomes so easy, you can feel like the chef of your kitchen. Easy prep, easy cook, easy clean. Reynolds Wrap.
Would have been a cool thing to do.
Yeah, so in turn, you have a balance reissue where it's pretty much the same tracks from that best of vinyl thing that came out within the last year.
Right.
There's no rarities, there's no alternatives. They claim that one or two of the soundboard songs are previously unreleased, and I don't know if that's
I think
really
I think
true.
the packaging looks cool, and the fact that you got some live stuff in it. Again, this is the bare minimum. I mean the deluxe box set I thought looks cool with the book in it. It's more than we've gotten with any of the Dave era stuff, which kills me. I mean, what is that, like it's like a 15 or 20 page booklet that comes in the box set. I mean, that's awesome. I don't even know what's in that booklet, but that's pretty fucking cool.
I think Michael Schinkel, is that how you say, not Michelle, Michael Schinkel of the Netherlands, who knew the Van Halens out there, or at least knew the relatives that knew them. I believe he contributed to it. I know it's a really well put together thing, but the average person listens to Van Halen with their ears, not their reading eyes.
No, I know, but I mean, for hardcore fans, give them something to love, of which there's still a legion of them. I mean, good Lord. I mean, the Van Halen news desk is super successful because there's so many of us that want all this stuff,
Yeah.
And God damn it, we deserve it.
And yes, we do. And I still think that more videos from the No Monk collection are going to leak. I haven't followed up with my sources on that, but I've reason to believe that was just the tip of the iceberg, because one of our listeners reached out and said, oh, I have this many videos of live videos of Van Halen that are this great quality, and they personally collected all of that. So it's a when, not an if.
Right. Still a lot more out there, man. I mean, I have these thoughts a lot more than I shouldn't say more than I probably. I mean, when Dave shuffles off this mortal coil, the shit that's gonna just flow out of there. I mean, I don't want to see the bad. I want to see the good, or hear the bad. I want to hear the good.
Right.
But there's so much stuff that is just vaulted, right? I mean,
I think so. You want to hear the disco Dave stuff. That's what I'm hearing.
Exactly. Well, you know what, dude? I mean, again, speaking of deluxe stuff, I mean, it's a very small world of people who are, would want to hear songs that did not make your filthy little mouth, or any other extra songs that did not, they just didn't record just 12 songs.
Right. I entirely agree.
I mean, and imagine how excited I can remember how excited I got when I got The Best and Mississippi Power was on it.
Yeah, that's a thing that you can easily find on YouTube, where they put 3 or 4 unreleased songs from that same era, or rare songs from that.
Right.
And
I mean, put aside the mythical, almost a full album of John 5 stuff, which weirdly just never would stop coming out, right? Now going on 2 years ago. But again, I keep going back to what our friend at the Mojo Dojo puts out. I mean, I would love on CD, for whatever time period it was recorded, I want the yellow cover, Shine a Little Love, the stuff that we hear in the back of No Holds Barbecue. As we know, Dave records tons of shit. I would like real versions that I can consume, whether it's on Spotify or preferably I'd rather have it on CD with a bunch of cool illustrations and a handwritten booklet with some cool shit, just like a different kind of truth booklet, things like that, or the booklet that was for your filthy little mouth. I mean, I could visualize all this stuff. Listen, I get it. The economics are that does not make sense to put out a 12-song CD of Dave Rarities. I mean, the physical cost of all that, but fuck, put it out. Give us something to consume, not just on a YouTube channel.
Well, I think we go between we'll take anything to him then putting out Scotch and Sofa and us going, why did you put that out? And why'd you put that out 3 different versions and tease that it was coming out?
Right.
Damn you, Dave. And we kind of swing back and forth about he really should put out stuff. And then he does, and you go, oh, yeah, you shouldn't have put that out. How about another? Try again. I don't know
Right.
what the answer is. I just know it's great he's coming back. It's great we're getting this half-assed. I call it half-assed because they didn't get the metadata correct, possibly. Balance reissue. We see
Right.
Joe Holmes back at it. Jake Faun's busy. Steve Vai is busy, etc. So the world of Dave is still producing news, but
Right.
we're
By the way,
still
this would be a great time to do a couple Roth Show podcast episodes leading up to the tour. There's your promotion right there without actually doing promotion.
yeah. If you feel like doing it, have the band talk. And have Tom edit it with the approved content.
Right.
Hey, this is so and so and so and so. We're excited to be coming to blank and blank and blank and playing all your favorite David Lee Roth songs. See you there.
I
There's the
believe
script.
the DLR vaults rival the 5150 vaults as far as the amount of hours of content that's in there. And it doesn't have to just be music. There's all sorts of weird wackadoodle videos on there that we don't see. We know, right? I mean,
Yeah.
think of the places Dave has been that did not merit or did not ever get a 25-minute YouTube video or whatever it was like we got from Thailand.
So if we, by some random happenstance, had a listener who worked around the Disney vaults that had access to Radio Disney radio promos, supposedly there's some really off-color promos that he recorded to promote in the early 2000s that never came out.
Wait,
There's
who
also-
did?
Dave.
Radio Disney.
Yeah, for some reason, whoever was doing his promo went, okay, cut these and cut these so you get some airplay. And I think at the time, Radio Disney was playing non-teen pop stuff too. But this is a story I heard from somebody who would know that he wasn't censoring himself.
That
So,
is hilarious.
yeah. So in other words, in that era, I know he did that. I know he had a meeting with J Records, or was that the Clive Davis label where after they cut him loose from Arista?
Right. Your golden parachute includes your own label deal
Yeah.
with a bunch of hype that no one will be talking about within 12 to 16 months. You'll get your first couple releases out and that's it.
It was either Octone or J
I
Records,
think it
or
was Jay.
that he met with. It was something within that realm, and he met with A&R people over there because supposedly he was trying to get a record deal. And there was some miscommunication, surprise, surprise. But he was out and about and doing stuff. And like you said before, I think people are waiting to release stuff. But this Radio Disney stuff is supposedly awesomely awful or awfully awesome. I don't know which one it is. I haven't heard it. I just heard about it.
Oh man. That I've never heard that. Radio Disney. That's gonna keep me up tonight.
Yeah, I'm sure it was supposed to be as simple as like this is Diamond David Lee Roth, and you're listening to my new single, blank. It was supposed to be that, but he added some color to it, like just like your aunt's living room. I don't know. In that era, he was doing all the appearances, he was doing all the interviews, etc. So I'm wondering if every radio station had it. Like, did you ever see him cutting Howard Stern radio promos after an appearance, or they just walk him into the promo room and he knocks it in one take?
No.
I'll see if I can ever find that online. But he's awesome with that stuff. But I'd have to believe that some of those promos are really bad and edgy and awesome.
It just reminded me of something. We've brought this up before. I can't, it was one of these things that popped up, a YouTube short or a YouTube, and it was Dave. It was Around Your Filthy Little Mouth, what I call kind of the serious Dave, the hair pulled back. He's doing an interview.
The busboy
Lucid.
attire when he's performing.
Yeah, lucid, not mugging for the camera,
Yeah.
but just straight. Do you know what I mean? And then I got to thinking, compared to, say, the Maron interview or Joe Rogan, where it's just a different vibe and demeanor, and
Yes.
the non sequiturs and the weave,
Well,
let's say,
the fake laughing at his own jokes.
Yeah.
That was not there in the 80s.
No.
No.
And I'm not dissing it at all. I'm just saying it's markedly different. And then you wonder why. Because I mean, even through into the 80s, it was like serious, straight ahead Dave. He'll give you'll still laugh, when he goes on Joan Rivers or whatever. I mean, by force of personality.
Yeah.
By force of personality, you're still gonna laugh and enjoy it, right? But it's making sense, and you're understanding where he's going and what he's talking about, versus fast forward 25, 30 years later, it's definitely different.
I have a theory about that one. You know how when you go to public school, you went to public school, right? You weren't a prep schooler? Okay.
No.
I never asked that about you, and no shame if you were a prep schooler. But you know how your teachers, you either seem to get them in the last 2-3 years before they retire, or the first 2 or 3 years of them teaching.
Yeah.
You either get like the 55, 60-year-old teacher, or you get the 24-year-old teacher.
Right.
And that 24-year-old teacher is still learning their new tricks, and everything is super contemporary, and they learn how to manage the classroom doing all that stuff. But then you see that same teacher 20 years later, and they're still doing those same exact tricks and references because they're reusing their lesson plans from when they were 24. I think that's kind of what happened with Dave, where he was state of the art until a certain point, and then he was using all those same tricks, but Nirvana happened and different things happened. And that's where the disconnect was.
I think I don't think you get a lot of argument from people that Dave, and I remember a lot of press covered this, but the words evolving in Dave, it took a bit. Never finished, but from the sensibilities of the 80s compared to the 90s and beyond, especially amongst grunge and everything, I mean, you couldn't help but it definitely looked like a fish out of water compared to what was everything that was current and ongoing and going on there. And I'm not saying nobody ever expected Dave to show up in flannel staring at his shoes, for goodness sakes, on a show. But, I think that was maybe part of it too. Like Your Filthy Little Mouth. It was a more somber record, a different sort of record. Yeah. Compare that to the press with A Little Ain't Enough. But even in that time period, and not just musically, sound wise, I mean, I think he was definitely searching and trying to figure out where he was going to go musically.
My overgeneralization of the whole thing was 1996 was the start of I Am Van Halen. The years leading up to that, he was trying to go, well, I like all kinds of music, and I'm a world traveler, and I do all sorts of stuff. And then that 96 bust up happened with Van Halen, and that became his I Am Van Halen. So while he did do the DLR Band album, when he was playing live in support of it, he only played one song from the DLR Band album, and it was still mostly Van Halen. And then you look at that 2003 tour, 2002, he pretty much only played Van Halen, and then I think Yankee Rose and maybe Going Crazy or California Girls. It was like 2 or 3 solo songs, if that. And then 2003, it's like just Van Halen, Just Like Paradise, California Girls, maybe Going Crazy, but it was still 3 songs. And from that point on, he became I Am Van Halen. And that's the quote that I think he started using around the Vegas residency promo of 2020 and Joe Rogan, I Am Van Halen. I think it all started in 96. And that's when the clothes became weird.
The Carhartt overalls.
The 99 Finland MTV
Oh, 99 that
video.
time. I was thinking when you mentioned Rogan, I pictured that. Those late 90s outfits were 10 years too late.
And continued into the early 2000s. And so now you kind of expect him to be wearing the most hideous clothing ever. Like not looking super cool, like just the grossest clothing.
It's funny you mention this because I think about this a lot because I think visually, and I was watching some, was it '05 or '07 video, Van Halen video, and I love Dave's look then with the hair and the bolero jacket. I thought those jackets were really freaking cool, right? And then you fast forward to, was it 2015, and it's like, what's with the freaking swimming shirt under, the cycling, do you know what I'm saying? Shirt underneath the vest thing with, do you know what I'm saying? It was like, and then the handkerchiefs all the time. And there was another thing that he was doing a lot too. The plain black and the vest. And he had the yellow shirt, but then it was just the vest with no shirt. I mean, yeah, and now conversely, I thought he looked really cool for the most part. Looked like a rock star, but didn't look like he was trying to be 25 again, that was the impression I got in that 99, 2000, 2001 era, the Sammy tour stuff. It's like, all right, well, Sammy's looking like he's, closing up the Surf Shack. I am coming out with the freaking tightest, glitteriest, spandex. I got the hair cranking again and that old bit. And he can, clearly the guy can pull it off. He's in such shape, right? But you're also, dude, you're 50, or whatever it was at the time. But I thought opening the Kiss shows and at M3, I was like, you know what? This look is cool. He's not showing up there with the page boy hat and those same fucking overalls, and he's not wearing he's not wearing a Peloton shirt or whatever was underneath. You know what I mean?
Oh, it was an Under Armour shirt because the logo was barely blacked out.
That was it. Okay, I'm sitting there, Peloton, aerobics, diving, swimming. Yeah. Thank you for filling in my blanks there. I appreciate it. You knew exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah, I didn't know if he thought he was going to be thrown in a pool. He was just prepared for. Yeah. Yeah. I look, I don't mean to rag. When people rag on Dave, I staunchly defend him.
Oh, same here.
I feel like we're in close company. We can make fun of it a little bit. But some of these fashion choices, because I know he's extravagant with getting outfits made for a tour, with having racks of clothing in every size for people in the band, and him going like, you should wear this and take it for free. Like he's generous in that kind of way. But there's
put on those. I brought you socks.
Yes, the socks, the Mark Elmer story, that kind of stuff. He's known to be generous and meticulous.
Sure.
But I'm surprised with all that he doesn't have somebody near him to go, by the way, not a good look. By the way, don't do that. By the way, wear underwear.
Well, that's the funny thing too, because look, from the comic book to, to his own art, all his own artwork, Dave thinks visually. He's a very visual guy. He's got a sense of design about him. He could manifest physically what's in his head to the canvas or to the fabric. You know what I mean?
Or the tattoo.
Exactly. Thank you. Or the tattoos. Yeah. It's just that sometimes he's manifesting in his head is like a kind of a WTF sort of thing sometimes over the last 10 years, 15 years.
And that WTF, to be clear, was not a Mark Maron reference?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
Soon, Mark Maron's throwing in the shoes.
He's throwing in the shoes.
I'm bummed. Now I'm paying more attention, even though if I don't know who the person is, I can't listen to the interview. But yeah.
I'm with you. Amazing back catalog. I'd have to imagine he's going, who else do I still want to speak with?
Right. The consistency is amazing, though. Twice a week, every week for how many years? How many episodes? I mean, that's fucking incredible, man. I mean, I like his comedy. I went to one of his special tapings here in Minneapolis. I think he's funny. One of the things I love of recent, and he started doing this a bit before he announced that this was a couple of weeks ago. This was going to be in.
Right.
Is that there's people who's coming on where he's just like, man, I really resented you. Yeah. I thought you were calling me out with that bit, but bravo for him to and to go, Yeah, I was fucked up. It was wrong. What do I care? You're successful. That's fucking great, man. But man, did I resent you when you got that special. It's very self-effacing, and that's one of the things I like about him.
He started off the show. That's actually an interesting thing about Mark Maron. Not that this is the Maron cast or anything like that, but he started off that series allegedly, in his words, because he had nothing going on in his career.
No,
He didn't know what he was going to do.
he got the boot from Air America when he was doing that thing in New York. Yeah.
Yeah, he was going through a divorce. He felt his stand-up career was fledgling. So the centerpiece of a lot of his interviews were what you just said, where he goes, "Man, I used to not like you." And
Right.
because he was resentful, he didn't get the Weekend Update chair on SNL, or he's passed up for this or that, or Dane Cook was better looking and had more success, etc. And then over time, you saw this guy who was happy with how things shook out, who started to work nonstop, who became praised for being original. And it was this accidentally, this guy gets happy, even as you listen to like his girlfriend dies on the air, and he had the broken engagement or two and all that stuff. And you interestingly saw him grow and evolve. And meanwhile, if we compare that to Dave, I don't think we've heard any evolution of Dave through 40 years of interviews. I don't think we've ever heard anything to go, that guy's finally happy or he's finally settled in. Am I wrong?
No, you're not. And it's one of the things I thought of. I've thought of this before, often through the years. And that is, I think public facing Dave might go through some tweaks and changes, but in his mind, I think he has got, the facade must be maintained at all times.
Yeah. Vaudeville.
The celebrity, bigger than life. This is, I mean, there's only been a few interviews. I have an interview, I think it was from like LA Magazine or something. I have it printed out. It's like 15 pages. I remember I got it from someone and I photocopied it, and I have it stuffed into my version of Crazy from the Heat, but it was a really deep interview. And I think it was from like Los Angeles Magazine, LA Magazine, whatever it was, on the West Coast, on the eve of like the reunion, like right when the reunion was happening. And it's rare, man. I go back and read that interview oftentimes, and it's the writer got it, and Dave was pretty, introspective. Dave's always very introspective, and so often very introspective, but oftentimes I think there's this with him, it's kind of, I have to maintain this air of rock star celebrity, bigger than life. This is what people expect.
Yeah.
It's still, and it comes across as, a lot of times, he wishes it was still 1985, doesn't he?
Yeah. The turning point for me with Dave was the Henry Rollins thing. That first it got misquoted, that it was somebody telling the story of Henry Rollins. But when you actually listen to the Henry Rollins bit of him meeting Dave in that X1 gallery in 84, 85, whatever that was, and Dave recognizing Black Flag or Henry Rollins and going, "Hey, Black Flag, right?" And at first you go, okay, so this guy does know everything going on. But the Henry Rollins part of the story where he says something like, "Yes, that gig we had 14,212 people and the merch gross was $74,000. Do you know that bit I'm talking about?"
Yeah, yeah.
And then Henry Rollins is going, "Oh my God, how do you know all that?" And to paraphrase, Dave goes, "If you don't know, you just make it up."
Right.
And you go, how many decades has there been? So the whole Jones Beach Wolfgang bust up story of him going, and here we are in New York City at Jones Beach. And you go, Jones Beach is nowhere near New York City. To me, that goes, okay, if you got that wrong, what else did he get wrong? To him, he just might be going, who cares?
I'm spinning a yarn. When you think of it, so much of it the last few years is about, especially when you look at the podcast, it's about telling stories. It's like storytelling with Dave. And that's was the Rogan interview, so much of that versus really, and I think it's got to be super hard to interview Dave, obviously. And,
Yes.
and especially now compared to like when you did it, when you were, a young pup journalist,
18,
right?
19, something
Right.
like that. Yeah.
But when you look back at Dave at that time, I mean, he tried to be a bit more. I mean, think of the time, the Hold Your Filthy Little Mouth there. It was a bit more serious. The music was it,
Yeah.
I mean, he saw the writing on the wall with grunge and everything. That didn't hit. Well, now I got to be back to bigger than life, Dave, right? And I think so much of it is that the story precedes the grand stories precedes like everything else. So you don't really know, and you don't really know what the motive is, or don't really know what's really going on, what's making him tick nowadays these days. And on top of all that, you really have, for the better part of, well, shit, for years now, think of it, virtually no press.
Yeah.
The couple podcast interviews, really no press around any, and I think this was by design, as we talked about, no press around the Van Halen reunion.
At the beginning, a little bit, but by 2015, I don't remember anything.
No, a couple things, right? I mean, but it wasn't like, I mean, you would have said before 2007, if you said, okay, when Van Halen gets back together, Dave's going to be everywhere pumping and promoting this thing. It's like winning the lottery, man, for him and for the fans. He's going to do 2 hours on Howard Stern. None of that happened. There was that one press conference where Dave was wearing, again, the cool jacket. I love the photo of the four of them where Eddie's like, Eddie's kind of like, kind of leaning slumped a bit. And Dave's got the I know this look by heart. Dave's got the cool glasses. The cool he's biting the arm of the sunglasses a bit. And I remember distinctly at that time, because I hadn't seen any recent photos of him, like, fuck yeah, this reunion's going to be great because he looks cool. You know? Which shows you, I mean, it's a stupid thing to say, I guess, but that's part of it because they're a very visual band. But, there's been so little press really the last, of him doing, it was either very controlled, okay, we're doing this about the artwork.
Yeah.
This is or like, he's got a publicist. We're doing this for Ink the Original. And even then it's yarns and stories,
You're right. It is storytelling. Unfortunately, it's the wrong stories being
and he's
told.
good at it. Unfortunately, we've heard these stories all the time, I mean, we've heard, I'm reminded of, it's funny. This reminds me of Cheap Trick and Rick Nielsen. I mean, yes. I have not, and they haven't done any press recently at all of late. But a couple years ago, whenever the advanced press in every, and I know from doing publicity, this is the talking points you're allowed to talk about. Dude, I could have wrote every single one of these interviews. It's, well, we're too dumb to quit. It was, you played with John Lennon and the guitar collection. And that was about it. And it was the same for every freaking interview. And it drove me nuts.
But with Rick Nielsen, I have to say, because I'm not comfortable with most of my interviews before a certain year. I'm not saying I'm good. It's just I'm better with active listening, because you do anything enough times, you become not terrible at it just from accidentally doing it over and over. My first Rick Nielsen interview sucked so bad because I didn't realize the whole thing is you ask him the question, he does a one-liner, pauses for the laugh, and then starts answering. I didn't know that's every Rick Nielsen interview.
There's a theme to it, which it reminds me too, because this is why I love podcasts. I love doing podcasts because, and this is where it's really shifted, and it wasn't evident with the podcast that Dave's done, is that podcasts are the greatest long form interviews. It's like, it's what we always loved about, whether it was NPR talk radio, the best of talk radio, where it's not somebody just telling stories. It's not somebody shouting at you. It's it's a real conversation.
It's a conversation.
But we never really had that with any of those prior interviews.
Arguably, no. I would have thought he'd be better with podcasting based on his radio show from 06, which is basically a round table that he was moderating.
Right.
People would call it very chaotic, which it seemed that way, but he was having the call screener, Animal, the security guard, Brian Young, Hutch, the board operator, uh, Linda, the nurse, Linda, the EMT trainer who we had on the show, and other people, all Robin Bacay, I think was the other person, having them all going, and the call screeners working everybody that way. So I thought he'd be a natural for podcasting, yet his podcasts are just basically monologues.
Well, here's the funny thing about that is that, I mean, because Dave had no experience in radio, that format right there is just your basic classic morning zoo format, right?
Yeah.
With one, and that Howard Stern perfected for ages, that everybody did, where basically you get one main guy and you get to play off all these other, wacky characters and current events and shit like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder if Dave wouldn't have preferred to do the monologue stuff, riffing, and maybe getting fed with just one host. I mean, with his attention span, that's a lot of people to play off of,
He probably thrived with the cast, but I just thought he could have done amazing with podcasting.
Yeah.
I think
what I'm saying is I say as a guest, it's not really the kind of deep conversation, the podcast that he's done as a guest, Rogan and Marin, and there's been a few other ones, smaller ones out there that I can't remember. There was one guy I can't remember, and that was actually pretty good. I wish I can remember the guy's name. I had never heard of him. Maybe it was a radio show that was a podcast.
It Scott Lips?
Yeah, I think that was it. Yes. No, wait.
Millman, what Tracy Millman was one of them. Scott Lips was another one. He did like 10 of them. Vulture was one. Rogan, Marin. Why do I remember all this and I can't remember anyone's birthday or phone number?
I can tell you every phone number I knew back when I was in high school, but I'm hard pressed to tell you my wife's phone number, for God's sakes.
I'm with you there. So with Dave, I get, the older I get, the more that we're doing this, the more I'm appreciative for what we do get. I really do hope that what I mentioned before, that some of those festivals that we figured out that did happen in the late 90s, video of those emerge, because I love that era of Dave, because he can sing. He's not cringingly old. Like it's weird fashion, but it's not an old man singing songs about strippers. It's weird when a 65-year-old or 70-year-old sing about strippers. It's less weird when a 45-year-old.
The other thing too is this was freaking Dave going in for the kill, not vaudeville, grimacing, big smiles, doing the Al Jolson shuffle in the middle of freaking somebody get me a doctor. It's funny because when you look at the later stuff, so much after 2007, especially 2012 and 2015, or 2012 when you had the dance floor and stuff, a lot of Dave's shimmying and moves and stick didn't match the fucking horsepower of the music.
No.
Back up to Finland though, he wasn't doing any of that shtick. He was out there for the most part. He was out there to kill. Do you know what I mean?
He was totally out there to kill, except I think Little Dreamer, when he starts doing some kind of a weird shimmy and he nearly assaults the cameraman and he assaults a female on stage. And I'm not going to use allegedly. He clearly assaulted a female.
There's things like that goes a little bit too far. But the other thing is that band was a monster, man. And I'll tell you, that's a reminder, speaking of drummers, Ray Luzier.
Yeah.
Fuck, there's a reason why that guy stuck around so long, because that guy's a beast with the Van Halen and the solo stuff. He was great.
Yep. He was great. Bassist, was it Todd Jensen, who's in Journey, I think?
Right.
Not so bad himself. Bart Walsh, not so bad himself. He was plucked out of the Atomic Punks. No keyboard player. They used the pre-recorded keyboard jump part. Wasn't really a keyboard era. It was a monster band that nobody talks about, because I think Dave wants to be forever disassociated with Bart Walsh, unfortunately.
Yeah. So let's get out of here on this.
Yeah.
Unless people think that we spent the last 45 minutes being super negative, we're not. I will tell you this. No, I am really looking forward to. I am going to be devouring YouTube. I am going to be hitting YouTube. My toggling last 5 days, all during the tour because I want to see some really killer pro shots, like we saw on M3. I want to see some great stuff posted. I'm going to be up there looking at, a day or two after every freaking tour date. I mean, I've never had to search for Paso Robles before, but now I'm going to. You know what I mean? I'm really looking forward to seeing how this all goes. I want to see the set list. I want to see the band. I'm really excited for this. I am thrilled he's back and doing it.
I'm with you. That's why I'm spending time and money to see 3 shows, maybe 4. I think it might be funny to go to Gary, Indiana, just to say that you went to Gary, Indiana. But so never say never on that one.
The
I don't know
timing
why.
for me just doesn't work out. It's killing me. It's just,
I think you'll see more shows. I wouldn't worry about that. I have no insider knowledge on that. I did have insider knowledge on these dates being announced. I did not have insider knowledge on what I'm saying right now. I just think with patterns predicted that when COVID killed the 2020 touring, Jake Faun told us, which we aired on the show, that he was asked about a year and a half or so of avails of them going to Europe. And when it came to this run, different people within the production end were asked, hey, hold a year of your life just in case. We're not going to give you any dates, but hold a year. I think that Dave spent so much money on pre-production, he's going to have to recoup it with shows.
with actually going out there and working and getting those paychecks.
That is my 2 cents. And if you want to tell me I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong, but go ahead.
You know where to find us.
You do. So if you can also find any of these late 90s shows in Estonia, Sweden, Denmark, Canoe Place in the Hamptons of Long Island, please reach out. We would love to see it. Maybe we'll have you on to do a live watch along or something if you could figure out where these things are. But thank you to Danny Young for figuring that one out. Thank you to anyone who's still listening. Thank you to Steve for being so patient with the diatribes.
All good, my friend. All good.
Look at all the people here tonight. Now look at all of the people here tonight.
If you run a data center, the idea of downtime doesn't compute. That's why data centers rely on solutions from ABB Installation Products to keep everything connected and running smoothly. ABB is your one-stop shop for quality components designed to maximize reliability and safety. Developed to help ensure connectivity, built to perform and to outlast. Because uptime is a big deal to big data. ABB, engineered to outrun.
Want to keep your personal number private but still stay connected? With Line 2, you can get a second phone line right on your device with a super simple app and no need for another phone. Whether it's for online shopping, dating, or shielding your main number from spam, Line 2 is an easy way to manage it all. Ready for peace of mind without breaking the bank? Call, text, block, and more for only $9.99. Get started with line2.com/audio or download Line 2 in any app store today. Line 2, your second line simplified.